Welcome to G Fun Facts Online, where we unravel the fascinating science and systems that shape our world. Today, we're talking about a silent, slow-motion collision happening right under our noses. It's not a flashy asteroid or a blockbuster movie plot. It's a demographic tide that's on a direct collision course with one of the most important safety nets ever created: Social Security. You see, we are living longer than ever before, and we're having fewer children. This simple fact, this monumental achievement of modern civilization, is fundamentally challenging a system that was built for a completely different world. The promise of a secure retirement, a bedrock for generations, is facing a stress test like never before. So how did a system designed to protect the elderly become so vulnerable? What does this mean for your future, your parents' future, and the future of society itself? And most importantly, can we fix it? Stick around as we unravel the unraveling safety net. The story of Social Security is, at its heart, a simple story of a promise between generations. Most systems around the world, including the one in the United States, operate on what's called a pay-as-you-go model. Think of it like a direct transfer. The money you pay in taxes from your paycheck today isn't being saved in a little account with your name on it. Instead, it goes directly to pay for the benefits of today's retirees, your parents, your grandparents. This system worked beautifully for decades. Why? Because the demographic math was on its side. After World War II, the baby boom meant there was a massive base of young workers paying into the system, supporting a much smaller group of older retired people. The pyramid was wide at the bottom and narrow at the top, but that pyramid is starting to flip upside down. We are now facing a dual demographic squeeze. First, the baby bust. Fertility rates across the developed world have plummeted. In many countries, the rate is far below the 2.1 births per woman needed just to keep the population stable. This is due to all sorts of factors: better career opportunities for women, the high cost of raising kids, and changing social norms. Fewer babies today means fewer workers tomorrow. Second, the longevity boom. Thanks to incredible advances in medicine and public health, we are living much, much longer. This is fantastic news, a true triumph of humanity. But it means that retirees are collecting benefits for a lot longer than the system's architects ever imagined. When Social Security started in the US in the 1930s, you might have collected benefits for a decade if you were lucky. Today, it's not uncommon to be retired for 2 or even 3 decades, so you have fewer workers paying in and more retirees taking out for a longer period of time. This imbalance is measured by something called the old age dependency ratio, the number of people over 65 for every 100 working age people. In the US, back in 1965, there were about 4 workers for every retiree. Today, that number is down to just 2.7. And the projection for Japan, the world's fastest aging country, is staggering. By 2050, there will be nearly as many retirees as there are workers. This isn't a theoretical problem for the distant future. It's happening now. The US Social Security Administration's own reports project that, if nothing changes, the main trust fund will be depleted by the mid-2030s. Now, that doesn't mean the checks stop, it's not going to zero. But it does mean that ongoing tax revenues would only cover a portion of the promised benefits, forcing a sudden and massive cut for millions of people. That's a future no one wants. And it's why this has become one of the most urgent and contentious debates of our time. To understand how we got into this mess, we have to go back to the beginning. The idea of a government-run pension system started in the late 19th century in Germany under Otto von Bismarck. The US followed suit in 1935 with the Social Security Act, a landmark piece of President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal. It was born from the ashes of the Great Depression, a time when more than half of America's elderly were living in poverty. It was a revolutionary idea, a federal safety net to protect people from the hazards and vicissitudes of life. But again, it was designed for the demographics of the 1930s. life expectancy was lower, families were larger, and the population was much younger. Then, in the 1970s, a pivotal change was made. Many systems introduced automatic cost of living adjustments, or COLAs. This was a well-intentioned move to protect retirees' benefits from being eaten away by inflation. But it fundamentally changed the math. Instead of politicians voting on benefit increases, the increases were now automatic, tied to economic indicators. This put the system on autopilot, making its financial health almost entirely dependent on those demographic trends we talked about. Combined with falling birth rates, this set the stage for the long-term challenges we're facing today. The consequences of this aging planet stretch far beyond pension fund balance sheets. They ripple through our entire society. First, there's the looming crisis in healthcare and long-term care. As a population gets older, it needs more medical services. Older people are more likely to have chronic conditions, but the really acute challenge is long-term care, assistance with daily living. As the number of people over 85 explodes, so does the need for care. This puts immense pressure on families and on the formal care system, which already faces workforce shortages and inadequate funding. Then there's the impact on labor markets. A shrinking working-age population can lead to labor shortages, which can stifle economic growth. The workforce that remains is also getting older. This brings the benefit of experience, but also challenges related to health and ageism. There's even evidence that with older workers staying in senior positions for longer, it can harm the career progression of younger workers who find fewer opportunities to move up. Finally, it puts pressure on overall economic growth. Some economists argue that an aging population leads to lower growth because of a smaller labor force and potentially lower rates of investment. But others see a potential silver dividend. Healthy, active, and engaged older adults can continue to contribute to the economy through work, volunteering, and spending. Tapping into this potential is critical, but it requires a major shift in how we view aging. So, we're at a crossroads. The math is clear, and doing nothing is not an option. The debate over reform is intense, because all the potential solutions involve difficult choices. Let's look at the main options on the table. One of the most common proposals is to simply raise the retirement age. The logic is simple. We're living longer, so we should work longer. This would shorten the time people receive benefits and lengthen the time they pay in taxes. But it's controversial. It disproportionately hurts lower-income workers and people in physically demanding jobs who may simply not be able to work into their late 60s. They also tend to have lower life expectancies, meaning this change would be a much larger cut in their lifetime benefits. Another set of options involves adjusting the benefits themselves. This could mean changing the benefit formula to be a little less generous, especially for high earners. Or it could mean changing that cost of living adjustment, the COLA. Some propose switching to something called a chained CPI, which is a slightly different measure of inflation that tends to grow more slowly. This would save the system a lot of money over the long run, but critics argue it would cause a slow but steady erosion of living standards for retirees, hitting the oldest and most vulnerable the hardest. A third path is to increase the revenue flowing into the system. The most direct way is to raise the payroll tax rate. A small, gradual increase shared by employers and employees could close a big part of the funding gap. But, no surprise, raising taxes is never popular. Another revenue-raising idea is to increase the amount of income that is subject to the Social Security tax. Right now, in the US, there's a cap. Any income you earn above a certain amount each year isn't taxed for Social Security. Raising or eliminating that cap would mean high earners contribute more. This is a popular idea for its progressive impact and would significantly help the system's finances. Looking abroad, we can see how other countries are tackling this. Japan, as the world's most aged society, is a crucial case study. They've begun a social security reform for all generations, which includes encouraging older citizens to stay in the workforce and reforming their long-term care system. Germany is strengthening its multi-pillar system, encouraging private and occupational pensions alongside the public one. They've even taken the novel step of creating a sovereign wealth fund, financed by government debt, to invest in the stock market and generate returns to help prop up the public pension system. Ultimately, the collision between our aging society and our social security systems requires more than just a few tweaks. It demands that we rethink our ideas about work, retirement, and the very nature of the social contract. The path forward will likely involve a combination of these difficult reforms, but it must also embrace innovation. Technology offers powerful tools. Smart homes, wearable health monitors, and telemedicine can help older adults live independently for longer, improving their quality of life and reducing the strain on care systems. But perhaps the most impactful strategy is to shift our entire focus from simply funding retirement to promoting healthy and active aging. Policies that support public health, lifelong learning, and flexible, age-friendly workplaces can enable people to remain productive and engaged for longer. At its core, this whole debate is about intergenerational equity. What does one generation owe to another? It's easy to frame it as the young versus the old. But a better way to look at it is that social insurance programs like Social Security are a way for society to pool risk. They provide security not just for today's elderly, but for all of us who will one day grow old. The goal isn't just to cut benefits to save money, but to create a system that is fair, durable, and sustainable for all generations. This demographic shift is a challenge, yes, but it is not an insurmountable crisis. The social safety nets created in the 20th century were a monumental achievement. Our task in the 21st century is to reform and reimagine them, ensuring they can continue to provide security and dignity in a world that is older, but also wiser and more resilient than ever before. The choices we make now will define the future of retirement for generations to come. Thanks for tuning in to Fun Facts Online.